There's no data that supports this, like, after 60, it's a hard cutoff. You can't have hormone therapy. There just isn't data to support that. And remembering also that the guidelines are very important, but they're always very conservative because they have to be. There's physicians that will never stray against a guideline, and I understand that, and that makes sense. But there's also reasons to stray from guidelines because they tend to be very conservative.
With lifestyle medicine specific curriculum aimed at, okay, what is the evidence behind each of those pillars? Preventing, reversing chronic disease. It's preventive medicine, which is the cornerstone of primary care. It's very focused on spending more time with patients. And so it takes time to do the education necessary to help people be able to make meaningful lifestyle change.
Very good, solid evidence supporting nutrition, exercise, stress management, sleep for health prevention, and even such great data for chronic disease reversal. We don't have to be in this epidemic of chronic diseases like cardiovascular disease, diabetes, obesity. That doesn't have to be our future. We can prevent that from happening. Any of us can prevent that.
Both of you are physicians, and you are coming to talk about Empower Lifestyle Medicine today. And I'm going to let each of you kind of share a little bit about the group and, you know, specifically about you guys and what you do and your name and what your specialty was and now what your specialty is. So Rachel, let's start with you if you don't mind.
My name is Rachel Coleman, and I'm one of the 4 physicians at Empower Lifestyle Medicine. My original background is actually in pediatrics. And so I practiced, and I still continue to practice pediatrics, but I finished residency in 2007. Worked for UF until 2022, then started my own direct primary care practice called Honeybee Pediatrics in 2022.
Wow.
And in the process of having that business, I became aware of lifestyle medicine at a conference that I went to.
What is it? What is lifestyle medicine?
Yeah. So there are 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine. So nutrition, sleep, exercise, stress management, strong social connections, and minimizing risky substances.
This sounds like the things that we recommend to people as they're aging.
Yes.
Okay.
100%.
Pretty much.
100%.
Okay. All right. Aligned.
What makes lifestyle medicine different is that it's a fellowship that you can take, you know, with lifestyle medicine specific curriculum aimed at, okay, what is the evidence behind each of those pillars for reducing, preventing, reversing chronic disease. So I learned about that and was like, well, this is sort of what I've been doing all along. Just like you said, it's preventive medicine, which is the cornerstone of primary care. It's just kind of being more systematic about it.
Yeah.
And it's very focused on spending more time with patients because it's kind of what it takes in order to have people be able to implement. You know, it's because unfortunately, there's a tendency of, can you give me a pill?
Yes.
Or can I have a surgery that will take away all my medical problems? Unfortunately, it doesn't tend to work.
No.
And so it takes time to do the education necessary to help people be able to make meaningful lifestyle change. So then I decided to get lifestyle medicine certified. And then in that process, I started talking to Anamaria about it because, you know, again, like a lot of the things that are involved in lifestyle medicine are things that we had started to be focused on for ourselves also because we were entering midlife and realizing like, you know, the wheels are going to fall off if we don't do something to try to, you know, get things back in order. Right.
Yeah.
And then she was facing a lot of burnout in her prior position, which I can let her tell you about. But I basically brought it up to her as, I think that this would be a fantastic thing for you too. And I think you would really enjoy it because, you know, in her own personal life, she was so dedicated to making lifestyle change to keep herself healthier. And, she's a great educator. So I knew that she would be wonderful with.
She is.
Yeah. So then she decided she was going to do it also. And then in the process of deciding to have a lifestyle medicine practice, we realized how much menopause was a huge factor for a lot of the patients that were coming to us. And then that led us to the next step of, all right, well, we should get Menopause Society certified as well so that we can have the depth of education necessary to counsel patients.
And are all 4 of you Menopause
Yeah.
Society certified? That is so amazing.
Yeah.
And unheard of. So thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Anamaria, take it away. So
Yeah. So Rachel and I have actually been friends since medical school.
Yeah.
So
Aw.
we have we celebrated our 20th year.
Well, now it's 25.
Yeah.
Oh my
Friendiversary.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for years, I went to medical school and then residency as a radiation oncologist. So an oncologist. So I'm a cancer doctor by training, which I loved. It was, amazing. I went to medical school knowing I wanted to be a cancer doctor. I wanted to walk that path with patients and help them through that. But over the years, it got harder and harder. And I think there's 2 things at play. One is it is very difficult to go through that process with patients over and over again, and be able to, in a healthy way, manage your the emotional impact of it.
Yeah.
And I don't think any of us oncologists do it that well.
Yeah.
And over time I realized it's impacting me a lot,
Yes.
and more than I was accepting for a long time.
Yeah.
So that was one issue. And then number 2 is the standard healthcare system is so overwhelming now for physicians. And it's almost impossible not to get burned out. So I was tired of, being pulled in 1,000 different directions, always focusing on treating the problem, never having time to focus on any prevention. When my patients would ask me, what should I eat? How can I be healthier? I just didn't have the time.
Yeah, you're looking at your watch like, oh
Yeah,
no, we only have 7 minutes.
Exactly. And I have 10 other patients already in room.
Right.
It just,
Yeah.
it's not a system that is designed for health. It's a sick care system.
Yes.
So through that, Rachel was constantly like, you should do something different. And eventually I started listening to her and just sort of giving myself permission to think about a different option, a different path, which was hard to let go of what I was always trained for and, pivot and do something totally different. But then I decided to give myself that permission, and we all went through the process of getting board certified in lifestyle medicine. And it was like this amazing wake up call. There's so much very good, solid evidence supporting nutrition, exercise, stress management, sleep for health prevention, and even such great data for chronic disease reversal. We don't have to be in this state of, this epidemic of chronic diseases like cardiovascular disease, diabetes, obesity. That doesn't have to be our future. We can prevent that from happening. Any of us can prevent that. And so I loved this, new path of being able to help people not just deal with the sickness that they end up with, but actually get as healthy as they can so that they can prevent getting chronic diseases.
It's so interesting because our model of the life care planning, I'm an elder law attorney, but we do this thing called life care planning. And one of the things that we talk to clients about is that there's always been this kind of overlying social, you're going to just get smaller and smaller and then die. And it's almost like we warehouse people in this last, 30% of life. And it's so disheartening.
Yeah.
And people enter this time in life and they feel like they're getting small.
Yeah.
So
We
I love
warehouse them in hospitals and in doctors' offices because also they're being shuttled to every specialist because nobody is the primary care doctors can no longer be that like, let's work on your nutrition. Let's figure out how to manage things so that you don't have to. They just shuttle them to different specialists.
and they'll spend all day.
All
And
day.
they didn't drink any water. They, like they haven't moved their bodies. They're not engaging their brains. Like they're doing because they're moving from office to office. It's interesting because we spent a couple hours at the Fixell Institute, which is Parkinson's, like the Michael Oken and Kelly Foote. He did the podcast too before you guys. And, it's this idea of holistic medicine where you have the occupational therapist, the physical therapist, the psychologist, the medical doctor. They do patient-centered care. So the patient actually goes to Fixell for the day and all of the treatment comes to them. So it's patient-centered care.
So they're not shuttling from office to office.
Right. And it is this like holistic approach to like, what else do we need to be doing right now? Oh, speech pathology. We're going to do a swallow study where we're actually under ultrasound so we can actually watch it as opposed to like looking at you, And so it's like tracking everything. It's every 6 months. And so they're actually able to do some things with Parkinson's that's a little different than what you might see in other places. But I think that it's coming, which is the good news. Like you guys are doing this. They're doing this at the Fixell Institute. But I think also for us, like clients will come in and they will say like, I've got these chronic health conditions like dementia or Parkinson's disease or, heaven forbid, it's like ALS. Like we get a lot of clients that are really at that stage where their family is dealing with a chronic health condition with one of their parents. And, we start talking about, okay, like how can we make your life happier? Like, how can you thrive more? Like, what is it that we can add in to make life better? And you guys are kind of talking about it, which is, the movement, the sleep, the good nutrition, all of that is going to create this foundation for people to be happier. And then we can see like this expansion. Like it's so interesting. We have clients who took up like painting in their 90s or like learned a new language or like traveled to visit family that they'd never seen before in Italy. And it's because of like, we don't have to just like accept that we need to fit into this box of getting smaller as we age.
Right.
And also, I think for women in particular, unfortunately, and I got to talk about this study, the Women's Health Initiative, like that has been such a, it's been such a hard issue. I think for, I think women older than me, there's like this 25 years of women who did not have access to good health care because of that study.
Yeah.
And I know I would love to hear you guys, your opinion on that. And like, what can we take away from this so that it never happens again? And like, what do you guys do to help unwind some of these ideas about hormone replacement therapy for women?
Well, so one thing I messaged to Anamaria about it last night was that, I just keep coming back to my frustration is that the WHI has been this incredibly damaging and, devastating, has had this big, huge impact on women's healthcare and access to healthcare. Essentially, they had, the study that showed this slightly increased risk of breast cancer cases in one arm of the study, very small, like you're talking about 9% in the treatment arm and 7.2% in the placebo arm. Not only that, but
just a 2% absolute increase in breast cancer risk.
And not only that, but they, in looking at it later on, they basically documented that the incidence of breast cancer in that placebo group was actually lower than you would expect based on rates in a population of women of
Wow.
those ages.
So the
So,
placebo may have been even inaccurate.
right. And that's breast cancer cases. That's not breast cancer deaths. There's no statistical difference between breast cancer deaths in placebo groups or treatment arms
Wow.
for any of the metrics that were evaluated in that study. So if you even lay aside the question, like, did it cause this increased risk? That's another kind of question. But we're not talking about excess numbers of women dying related to this. And yet they made this sort of like blanket decision that women should not be allowed to have access to hormone therapy, which we know will result in more women having osteoporosis, more women having UTIs, both of which are things that
When they
kill
don't use
women
hormone,
when they
but-
do not use
Right.
hormone therapy. And women die from osteoporosis related fractures. They die from UTIs,
I
causing
tell you, we
sepsis.
see it like this is what happens. It's the death event is a broken hip,
Yeah.
and then they go to rehab and they never come out.
Yeah.
Yep.
And before that, they were functioning so well. You
Yep.
know, they were driving a car. They had all this high function, but their bones are so, they've got this degenerative issue, and it's
And because they were told that they didn't need to get a bone density scan until they were 65. By the time they have
Right.
it done, they've already lost all of this bone.
I went to see my PCP today, and she told me the next time you need to have your bone scan is at 65.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I'm getting it tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. So these, huge impacts to women's access to hormone
Yeah.
therapy because of this study. And so then women get desperate because going through menopause is extremely challenging.
Fine.
So what has happened is that women then look to the wellness space, which, can have lots of positive things. But when it comes to things that have been offered to women over the years, when it comes to hormone therapy, there's a lot of questionable things that don't have data behind them and can have real harm. But because women were so desperate and they couldn't get it from their primary care doctor,
Yeah.
that's where they've gone for it.
So let's just break it down, because I do think that there are still women that do not understand perimenopause, menopause, when you're not getting estrogen. When you're not getting estrogen, what is happening? Like when that slows or becomes less frequent, what is actually happening to your body?
So before we go there,
Yes.
I would just want to add to the discussion of breast cancer risk in the WHI. What Rachel is talking about is the arm where it was estrogen and progesterone was the hormone therapy that has that 2% increase in breast cancer risk.
Right.
The other side of that trial was women that got only estrogen because they didn't have a uterus, so they didn't need the progesterone part. So in those women that were only getting estrogen
Yeah.
compared to placebo, they had a reduced rate of breast cancer compared to placebo. So estrogen was actually protective in terms of
And they weren't actually getting estradiol.
Correct.
they were getting conjugated equine estrogen.
Right. So it was a horse version of
Right.
estrogen,
Yeah.
Right.
which of course we now know is not as
It's not as good as
Right.
estradiol, which is the same as what our bodies produce.
Okay.
Yeah. So the whole I just had somebody text me this morning that issue of she's in perimenopause, she's having a bunch of symptoms, but she doesn't want to start HRT because her mom had breast cancer, so she's high risk. And so I explained this. Where does this idea that estrogen therapy causes breast cancer come from, and why it's not valid? And she never heard of that and was like, "Oh, thank you so much. That's really helpful to know." But that's a huge issue for women.
Wait, let me ask this other question.
Yes.
Okay. So we know that there is no increased risk of breast cancer when you take estrogen.
Right.
Right. We also know that there actually is a cardiovascular benefit. And there's all these other benefits. You talked about, osteoporosis and osteopenia and all these things that can create death events. And also just like brain health and like mental clarity and depression and feeling like energy depleted. Like all these things are happening. So estrogen can assist with all of those things.
Yes. Estrogen doesn't necessarily, if you're getting estrogen therapy, it's not necessarily going to help with some sleep issues. Studies have
Progesterone.
shown that it doesn't really
Yeah.
help. And even progesterone doesn't quite help that much
Okay.
with sleep as much as we see on social media.
But testosterone?
We don't have data that testosterone helps with
Okay.
sleep. Yeah.
Right.
Nothing else.
Running through all the hormones.
But we do have data that estrogen therapy helps with mood. So it helps with depression and anxiety, which a lot of women suffer during perimenopause.
Yeah.
And it definitely helps with long-term cardiovascular and what was the other? Oh, osteoporosis with bone health. Yeah.
So what is happening in your body when you're going through perimenopause or menopause and like that estrogen isn't, it's like your body just isn't, creating it anymore?
It is the decline of your ovaries. So our ovaries are intended to work for a certain amount of time, and then they start shutting down. And so it's a completely natural process. It starts with perimenopause, which is usually sometime in your 40s.
Yeah.
And during that time, estrogen levels, they're not steadily declining. They're kind of going haywire.
Okay.
So it's sort of
It's like worse than puberty.
or like puberty in reverse.
Sometimes you're light and sometimes you're fine. Yeah. Sometimes you're crying. Yeah, I remember.
Sometimes your estrogen level is really high, and then sometimes it just bottoms out. So it's like, I have we both have teenage daughters at home. So we're both in perimenopause.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's very similar to the puberty where hormone levels are not consistent. They're sort of all over the place.
Yeah.
It's just in reverse. So perimenopause, it's a very chaotic hormonal time. But overall, your estrogen levels are starting to decline. But they're just very chaotic in general. And then once you get close to menopause, then when you're a few years to the final menstrual period, then your estrogen levels are really declining significantly. And then once you hit menopause, your estrogen levels are low. So it's sort of this multi-year, it's usually 10 plus years, that starts off with a very chaotic hormonal milieu, and then ends up with estrogen and progesterone being very low. And that's how you continue for the rest of your life.
So when you start this hormone replacement therapy, you're consistently checking to try and get your levels back up, right? Like you guys are like, where are we now with estrogen?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
So hormone levels measured in your blood do not necessarily correlate with what you're experiencing as far as symptoms. And they're not helpful to guide treatment. In general, there's not really a strong need to check levels.
Okay.
Because we're not going to make a decision on what we offer you as far as treatment based on what those numbers are. We're going to treat you based on the symptoms that you're having.
Because that chaotic,
right?
Because you can check
Everyone's
your estrogen
different,
level,
probably,
and your estrogen could be really high.
You're getting one,
but you're
moment
still
at
in
a time.
perimenopause, or it could be really low. So it doesn't help make a decision.
Wow. Okay.
And in general, we prefer the term menopausal hormone therapy rather than hormone replacement therapy because we aren't replacing where your hormones used to be. The levels of hormone therapy that we're providing to women are much lower than like what you would get in a birth control pill.
Okay.
Because we're not intending to bring your estrogen and progesterone back to where you used to be because you're not going to be cycling anymore. We're providing a steady level of hormone.
That's going to, create good bone density. There are measures, like also the way you feel.
Yes.
But like your sleep, and if you are like me where I track like on the Oura Ring, like I track things, like I'm sure the same is true. you're still able to measure instead of just how someone feels, even though how someone feels is very important to the equation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do check levels. And it's mostly helpful in menopausal women where we know their estrogen levels are very low. So we want to get them to, their estrogen levels should be between 40 to 70. So that they're in sort of a therapeutic range, especially for bone density.
Okay.
And not everybody absorbs estrogen the same way. So you could have, and I actually just had a patient who's perimenopausal. I kept increasing her transdermal estradiol dose. She still had hot flashes, still had everything. I checked her levels multiple times. That wasn't that helpful, but she just wasn't really absorbing the estradiol. Yeah. And so I had to switch her ultimately to oral estradiol for her to have a significant effect. But checking levels wasn't that helpful for her because she was perimenopausal, and so they were always different.
Yeah.
So that's why it's tricky. There's definitely a little bit more of a, we get frustrated when we hear people say things like balancing your hormones, because that's not really what it is. It's really trying to give women back a certain amount of hormones so that they're getting the benefit, and so that the symptoms of perimenopause and menopause are being managed and controlled.
So we start perimenopause, we have menopause. We start with, it's not hormone replacement, it's hormone, and it's not balancing.
Right.
It's hormone therapy.
Menopausal hormone therapy.
Menopausal hormone therapy.
Yeah.
Okay. And you might start that in your 50s, even your 40s.
Even your late 30s.
Even your late 30s.
Yeah.
And then you might never stop
taking the hormone.
Yeah,
correct.
Because even in our 60s, our 70s, our 80s, our 90s, we still want good bones, good brain, good skin. I know I had benefits where I was like, I can't believe how much better my skin looks, but there's no reason to stop. Like, there's no greater risk of breast cancer or cardiovascular heart disease or anything like that.
There's absolutely no reason to stop.
And yet, again, there's this societal belief that if you're going to do any kind of hormones, that you should stop taking them after a couple of years.
I mean, still the kind of party line is the lowest dose for the smallest amount of time, or, something like that.
Right.
And I mean, there are health conditions that women can develop that would necessitate them stopping hormone therapy.
Okay.
But that's a small
What are
subset
they?
of
Like,
women.
what would some of those health conditions be?
So, like, if you have a hormone-sensitive breast cancer, if you're going to have to be on certain medications during that treatment.
Yeah.
And then when you finish treatment, I think that still the consensus seems to be that women can't have hormone therapy, but I would say that the data doesn't support that.
Yeah.
And that it should still very much be a risk-benefit discussion with each woman as to, like, okay, here's the potential risk to you and roughly how big we think that risk is going to be. But here are the benefits that you could have from being on this.
Because we are not just our breasts.
Right.
We are also our heart,
Exactly.
our brain, our bone structure. Our breasts are important, but there's all these other things that can be at risk, and we seem to be ignoring them just to protect our breasts.
Exactly. Cardiovascular disease is the #1 killer of women.
Of breast cancer survivors.
Of breast cancer survivors.
Right. And, like, the #1 cause of admission to a long-term care, nursing home level of care is incontinence. Right? And so, like, I have to talk about vaginal estrogen because
Let's do it.
We've been talking about estrogen and progesterone, and I want to talk about vaginal estrogen because there is this, I know when I first talked to my doctor about it, I had heard about it on Instagram, And I was like, how about vaginal
This
estrogen?
crazy vaginal thing I see on social media.
And they're saying like, it's amazing. It can help with breakthrough urinary incontinence.
Yeah.
It can help with UTIs. It can help with, kind of sexual, pleasure. And yet it had never made it onto the radar of even my hormone replacement therapy doctor. And so, tell me about that. What are the benefits of vaginal estrogen? And can it help my clients who don't want to come to you and start a process for hormone balancing, perimenopausal, menopausal, but they may be okay with vaginal estrogen, in particular, my female clients?
Yeah. Vaginal estrogen is amazing. And I would say almost every woman should be on vaginal estrogen if they're in menopause or even perimenopausal. Um, the the issue is you're placing it in your vagina on your vulva. It gets absorbed locally, so in those tissues. It does not appreciably increase your systemic levels of estrogen. So systemic means throughout your body. So it's not increasing your blood levels of estradiol. Um, there's been studies that have looked at that. Some of the studies, depending on the dose of the vaginal estrogen, there is a small increase in blood levels, but it's short-lived and then it goes back down as your vaginal tissues get thicker because of the vaginal estrogen. Um, there's been studies that have been done looking at vaginal estrogen use in breast cancer survivors that has shown no increase of breast cancer recurrence in breast cancer survivors using vaginal estrogen. So there is not any group, there's no increase in blood clot, there's no increase in stroke, there's no increase in anything from vaginal estrogen. Um, so the only group of women is, I would say, women who have had breast cancer are on an aromatase inhibitor. So that's a medication that suppresses estrogen levels to below menopausal levels, to where you can't even measure those estrogen levels. But if they're on an aromatase inhibitor and their oncologist feels like for their cancer, they do need their estrogen levels to be at 0. Not all women on an aromatase inhibitor need their levels that low. They're on an aromatase inhibitor because that just makes sense for their situation. If they're menopausal, usually they get an aromatase inhibitor versus tamoxifen.
Okay.
So it's really a subset, a very small subset of women, breast cancer survivors that are on an aromatase inhibitor are questionable. They should talk to their oncologist about it. Everyone else can use vaginal estrogen.
And even those people might say, I'm willing to take the risk for the benefits of vaginal estrogen, which is huge.
Exactly. Those women, every woman deserves a conversation. And we feel strongly about this, about everything, but especially hormone therapy for women. There's no role for doctors to say, I'm not giving you that medication. I'm not even going to talk to you about it. You don't qualify, or you're not. It just doesn't make any sense. Every woman deserves a risk benefit conversation. And then every woman deserves to make that decision on her own. If you decide as a woman that you understand the risks and benefits and that's what you want to proceed with, then that's what we should do.
Okay, I got to say this. So I went on Open Evidence, which I think is like the doctor AI search. It's like the Chat GPT for doctors. And I was researching protein, eating protein as a woman. Like, is it better for women to eat more protein, like in the morning when you get up before you go to the gym or whatever? There's a big debate about all this, but so I went on, and the result of my search was that there's no added benefit to women eating protein as compared to men. And that was the answer that I received. And then I was like, let's look at the study. And when we did a deeper dive into the studies, they only looked at women who were not perimenopausal or menopausal. So basically they excluded probably 25 to 30% of the population of women. But they made a blanket statement about women do not see an increased benefit. Women not women under 45, not women who aren't. And it's like, there's this just kind of this overlap of not studying women who are perimenopausal.
Of not studying women enough in general.
Or that. It's like 3% of your research dollars or 6%, or I forget what it is, but small amount, because it is complicated. And you guys are in the trenches of the complicated, because the labs are different for everybody. You're having to like case by case figure it out, because we're not the same as men. We are not little men. We are not, men. We're not men. We're different. And so you guys are doing that. Why can't we get the research to actually study women in the same way? Like, why is it so hard to like figure this out? And I know it's going to take a concerted effort.
The misogyny of medicine. How much time do you have?
I mean,
where do we begin? We have experienced. There's a urologist named Rachel Rubin who's fantastic.
Yes.
She has a great podcast on Peter Attia's podcast that I highly recommend. But like one of my favorite things she said was like the discussion about how as women go through menopause, their labia minora can just atrophy, disappear completely.
Wow.
And for the longest time, it was like, oh, I guess that just happens, And it's only in recent years that we're like having, addressing that like maybe that's not a good thing. Maybe we should be doing something about that.
Or maybe just educate doctors that happens.
Right.
And educate women that happens. So
but she was like, can you imagine if a part of a man's genitalia just shriveled up as they got older? She's like, I think we would have that solved already. So, I mean, I think that the issue is it is more complicated to study, especially when you're talking about going through the menopause transition. And I think, unfortunately, the WHI, because it ended up being this sort of, oh my God, what's happening? We have to stop everything. I don't know that we'll get back to people wanting to fund similar studies because they worry about the risk.
And I mean, it's like literally 25 years of women and men practitioners believing something that is true that's not.
Yeah, exactly.
And it has become so ingrained in like, these are true facts that estrogen causes breast cancer. And I think the other thing about that study, and I know you guys already know this, but it was like 11,000 people in that study. Is that right? Is that right? Okay. And the ones that they studied were women who did not have hot flashes.
Right.
They actually excluded women having hot flashes from the study, because if they gave them the placebo or the actual estrogen, they would know that they were getting whatever it was. So they eliminated women who were actually going through menopause. So basically it was a study for the most part of people who were postmenopausal.
Yep.
Right?
The average age
was 64.
So like at 64, most women have already gone through the change.
And also we know that hot flushes are not just like a benign thing. So to exclude all the women who were having hot flushes, you're excluding probably women who would benefit more significantly and or who are at higher risk to have cardiovascular complications related to menopause. So we don't know how it would have impacted.
So if we could redo that study, if we could actually redo that study and actually get 11,000 people in the study who were really going through perimenopause and menopause and not exclude women, and actually see if in fact the treatments that you guys are providing to people now really do benefit, I think it could be, astronomically helpful to women. And I feel like there's this population of women who are just not ever going to do it. I know women who are like in their mid 60s and 70s, they have such a like, no, I'm too old, or they even with vaginal estrogen, me having the conversation with a woman in her 60s, 70s, 80s, they really don't want to hear it. They don't think that it could help them. And they don't see that they should make a change or a shift. I don't know how how we can help them. But for women, and I'm not saying I won't try, because believe me, I do. But I and my clients who come in their 70s, 80s, and 90s, I always ask them, "Are you taking vaginal estrogen?"
Good. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Because when I almost always, if I bring it up with patients in their 60s or 70s, the first response is, "Oh, I'm already done with menopause. Why would I need that?" And then when we have a deeper conversation about the details as to why it would be beneficial, they're like, universally, nobody's ever told me that before.
I know. I know.
They're also, the fear is so entrenched because those women have lived through that initial WHI press release where, it was very scary. Immediately, every woman thought they were going to get breast cancer from being, they were taken off of their hormonal therapy. So that fear is very entrenched in those women. It was traumatic. And then that was the status quo for 20 plus years. And so then for them to now hear that was a mistake. You can take away that fear. That fear was not based on anything real. And so forget about that. That's hard to
Right?
That's very hard to walk those women through.
Oh, yeah, because they're like, wait, you told me for sure that this was the truth. Now you're telling me for sure that it's this? Like, which one is it going to be? And like, shouldn't I just be fine because I'm good now and I don't have to worry?
There has been a black box warning on vaginal estrogen and systemic estrogen saying this is going to cause breast cancer.
Yeah.
Up until
like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. Even when I would, prescribe it and women would say, okay, then they would get it from the pharmacy and see that black box warning and then decide on their own, oh, I'm not going to take this because it's too scary.
Okay. Yes.
So, yeah.
So we got work to do. You guys have work to do.
We have a lot of work to do.
Let's talk testosterone.
Okay.
For men, for women, like what does that, because I mean, I am a testosterone pellet person. Like I get it like every 10 weeks and I feel great. I mean, lately it hasn't been as good and like it's an incision and I haven't been that thrilled with it. But I mean, I know a lot of women get a testosterone pellet or take testosterone in different ways, but it all seems very wonky the way people are taking it. No one seems to be taking it the right way. And there's been a lot of talk about like you're addicted to testosterone and like, is this another problem situation? But what do you guys think about testosterone?
So it's a natural hormone in women's bodies. We cannot get addicted to testosterone therapy. Women's levels of testosterone are actually higher than their levels of estrogen. And so it's sort of it's not something abnormal or foreign that you're giving to women. It's part of hormone therapy, just like estrogen and progesterone is. The confusion comes around the fact that it's not been as well studied in women. And so there's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of things that we don't know about it. The best data that we have is with testosterone helping with hypoactive sexual desire disorder. So there's solid data showing that testosterone therapy will improve libido for women. Not all women, but there is an improvement in libido. The other things that testosterone therapy can help with, we don't have great data to support that, but we have women saying it gives me more energy,
sleep better, like my
makes
brain
me
works
feel
better.
Yeah,
Makes me feel better.
A lot of women say it makes them feel more like themselves.
I feel like I do better at the gym. I feel like my just generally movement, like joints, and like I don't feel as achy anymore. And I don't know whether it's the testosterone or the estrogen or the DHEA or some of the other things that I take, but I do know that before I started kind of adding these things to my life, I really was suffering. And like I needed sleep at 3 o'clock in the day, like every day. And I didn't sleep well at night. And, my brain didn't work as well. Like I feel smarter since I started. I mean, I really do. Like, I feel like I've actually like added a few IQ points in the last 10 years. So I don't know about that one.
Yeah, a lot of women will say things just like that. We just don't have good data to say, "Well, yeah, we did a study and it shows, without a doubt that that's a benefit."
Yeah.
We do have really good data though, in trans men getting high doses of testosterone for years and years and years, that it's very safe. So the safety data is there. We just don't have good data on what the beneficial impacts are, in terms of some of those symptoms that women have.
And I think the difficulty when it comes to pellets is, again,
Yeah.
that like the dose that's given isn't based on evidence. And it's because of the nature of it, where it's an implant, it's a dose that's released over 3 to 6 months. And women can sometimes go to supraphysiologic doses of testosterone and have side effects related to that can be irreversible.
Ooh.
Mhm.
So like voice change
Oh, wow.
is a big one.
Yeah.
Can impact your hair, acne.
Yeah.
And if you go to a level higher than you're meant to be, you can feel bad.
Yeah.
And then you can't really do anything about it for
Because
several
it's
weeks.
in you
Oh, that's terrible.
3 months. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think that's our frustration with pellets, is it might be fantastic.
Yeah.
But just like we were talking about with general hormone therapy, we don't have studies. We don't have data, which is extremely frustrating.
Yes.
So it's not being driven by good information. It's really hard to guide women on how you could use those safely
Yes.
when we don't have data to support it.
Hard.
Yeah.
So how do you guys deal with testosterone? I mean, do you prescribe it regularly?
Mhm.
And is it more like symptom driven, like you guys have talked about with the estrogen?
We always get a testosterone level on women.
Yeah.
And we assess their symptoms.
Okay.
And we generally start with estrogen and progesterone.
Mhm.
I don't like to start with all 3 hormones at the
Yeah.
same time,
'Cause then
because
you won't know what.
you don't know what's doing what. And so after they've started estrogen and progesterone and they're doing okay,
Yeah.
and if they have more symptoms, then we'll talk about starting testosterone, and we'll check their levels to see where it's at. And really, the initial baseline testosterone level is just to make sure that their level isn't really high. Because if they're having symptoms, we'll do testosterone therapy regardless of what their testosterone level is.
Right.
The therapy that we generally do is testosterone gel. So
Okay.
transdermal, meaning through the skin, it's the best format to do testosterone therapy. And there's no FDA approved female product in the United States. There are in other countries, but not here. So we prescribe male testosterone gel.
Yeah.
And the dose for women is 1/10 of the male dose. And so we just have women do 1/10 of that dose daily. It's just just rub it on your calf every
Yeah.
day, and that's it. And then we recheck the testosterone level and make sure that it's not too high or too low, and then adjust the dose from there.
Yeah. All of them, which do you think, like in just seeing patients come through the process, I mean, do you see transformation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so somebody comes to you, what are their symptoms normally? Like what are they telling you? I have this, I have this, I have this.
I would say, I mean, we see a wide range, but our most common patient is a woman in perimenopause who is coming in, essentially saying, I don't feel like myself anymore. A lot of struggles with mood, a lot of struggles with sleep, weight gain, feeling like they've got pain all sorts of places. They can't work out the way that they used to. They're eating the same way that they always have, and yet they're gaining weight. Their energy is low,
And libido.
and low sex
Libido's-
drive.
Yeah. And then you start them small at first, with what you think they're going to benefit from. You check their, and then what kinds of changes, transformation do you see? And how long does it usually take for women to see benefit?
Well, I would say it depends a lot on
Yeah.
how motivated they are for lifestyle change. I mean, just with menopausal hormone therapy, women can start to feel significantly better. They start to sleep better, feel more themselves again, which usually then gives them, I think, more motivation to make some of those lifestyle changes. But if people commit to the lifestyle change that we discuss with them, which I think is one of the things that distinguishes our practice, our practice from a lot of hormone therapy practice, is we are really focused on trying to help those women make those lifestyle changes. Because if all you do is give a woman hormone therapy and don't address the other things that are going on with her, she will get some benefit, but it's not going to be nearly the same degree of benefit as if she, optimizes her nutrition and she optimizes her exercise regimen. And I would say the women who are able to make those changes see benefits within a month, but really I would say 3 months for sure you can see big impacts.
The measurements, like I know for me, when the first scan that I had, I was shocked at the amount of visceral fat that I had. And I was like, it's crazy. And these things that are happening in our bodies, we might not be able to see it on the surface. And it's only when you actually check yourself that you realize. And I did a glucose monitor for a while, and I was shocked at the spike and I was like, oh no, I can eat bread. Like, no, I can't. And when I walk after a meal, how impactful it is on my glucose levels. And so it's like these little changes, and it seems like a 2-minute walk shouldn't have that kind of impact, but it does. It can take, a visit to the Indian restaurant from way out of range to like just a little bit out of range, and it's not that hard. It really isn't. And I think that's the key, is what you guys are talking about, is that the nutrition changes, the exercise changes, because I think a lot of us as we age think we don't need, to do heavy weight training, that there's this idea that that's not something for women and that we shouldn't be, training to failure, that, that is not something that's in our wheelhouse. We do yoga. I mean, I know I'm a yoga teacher. So like, a lot of people who are older women think that yoga is the key, but you're not getting any cardio. You're not doing zone 2 cardio, and you're not doing the weight training. And I think you guys are going to tell me, because I actually, guys, I've enrolled in Empower Lifestyle Medicine's program. I actually have my first appointment with Anamaria, like in 2 weeks, I think. And yay. And I have my DEXA fit tomorrow. I'm going to learn what my VO2 max is. And I think she'll also tell us what my zone 2 cardio levels are.
Yeah.
So I'm doing it, and I have the nutrition appointment in January. So like, it's like, I want to see how I can benefit from exactly what you guys are talking about, because it really is like changing your life. I mean, you can go, my mom, I watched her go through menopause in like her low 50s, and we just stayed away from her for like 4 years. Like, I remember one year, this is terrible, Mom, she died, but I'm just saying, Mom, if you're listening to this in heaven or whatever, like, I'm sorry to tell this story, but there was one year that we were having Christmas together. I was home from college, and she was like, I don't want to invite Grandma and Grandpa to Christmas this year. We literally did not have our grandparents over for Christmas because my mom, and no one would cross her.
She just couldn't deal.
She just couldn't deal.
Yeah.
Right? And we had them the next day, and we all pretended that was Christmas.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Oh my God. She was amazing. She was an amazing human. But that, like, we knew she was going through it.
Yeah.
And everyone
She
was like, okay.
not herself.
But she never really talked to you about it, I bet.
No.
And let me tell you, my kids are not going to have that experience.
Yeah.
They are hearing about all of it.
Yeah.
So I'm like, do you want to know?
Yeah. Right.
Whether they want to or not.
I know. Well, I actually heard a study they did study women going through menopause in England, and 20% of them quit or were fired from their jobs.
Oh, it's a huge issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like your brain isn't as good, you don't feel good, and like they're like, what am I doing with my life? And it's this terrible result of menopause on your body and your brain. And it's just not necessary.
To frame it for women as instead of like this awful, terrible thing,
Yeah.
we can look at menopause as this opportunity to invest in yourself as a woman. We spend decades of our life putting other people first.
Yeah.
A large percentage of the time, right?
Yes.
Menopause is sort of like your body is like, sorry, that's not going to work.
We're done now.
Yeah. We're done with that plan. You have to actually take care of yourself.
Yeah.
But it forces you to like figure out, okay, how do I take care of myself the best? How do I actually nourish myself properly? How do I move my body in a way that is going to be, adding to my longevity? How do I get rid of I don't want to swear, but
You can.
okay. Get rid of the shit in my life that isn't serving me anymore. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
if you can really focus in and give it the attention that it requires, that last, 30 years, hopefully, at least?
35, 40. I mean, we have
Can be the best one.
109.
Because I also think you are at a place where you've gotten a lot wiser, too. And you're able to, like, get rid of the stuff that is unnecessary that you for years and years have been like, I should do that.
Yes.
And you're like, why?
It makes me think of that study where 25 to 30% of the women quit or lost their jobs. I wonder how many of them got to the point where they were like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
And I want something different for myself. And so I'm going to drop this and do something different. I mean, I'm sure there were some people that it was menopause, but I feel like menopause is a time where you can really take the opportunity because, your kids are older, they don't need you as much.
Yes.
You can figure out what you want for yourself. Women have a really hard time doing that.
Yeah.
And menopause is this great sort of wake up call of like, hey, you are not going to be young forever.
Right.
Your body's changing. Take some time for yourself. Figure it out. Do it for you.
Because if you keep ignoring it like you have been,
I know.
you're not going to be able to function.
I'll tell you guys, I'm 56, about to be 57. And I've done so many lifestyle changes during this time, but I've had, hormone balancing therapy. And so I still have made those changes. Like I do yoga consistently. I do breath work, like the stress, like our business model is about, raising the consciousness, helping people age and die better. Like it's not about making money anymore. Like my kids are in graduate school. I don't need to worry about them. But also like I sauna like 3 or 4 times a week. I put aside money to buy a sauna that's in my backyard.
That's awesome.
And I cold plunge and like I reset and like I do this for myself and I don't do it for anybody else. But I feel like there is that exactly what you're talking about. It's like this moment in time where we have literally given ourselves away.
Yeah.
And it's like I'm watching other women go through it and I want to say, don't break, because there is this place where women keep adding in.
Yeah.
And they're taking care of children and they're, doing their jobs and they're taking care of the household. And, I know for me, I actually am an alcoholic in recovery. So like I broke and I turned to the drink. And when my children were in high school and I was like I was off the rails during that time. And it was like, I think it was in perimenopause. And, it's been 7 years now that I've been sober.
You
but
were in perimenopause.
Right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Perimenopause.
Yeah.
So I don't want that for other women.
Right.
It's like, it's really hard, but I love what you're saying about take this opportunity to reset everything, because it can be life changing. Yeah.
And it can
Love
be better in the second half.
Absolutely.
Like it doesn't have to be this negative, we're getting older and older and it's the end. Like it can be better. You know?
It can, and you can thrive. I mean, you really can. You can
Right.
add things in.
Yeah.
My dad and my stepmom, and they have like this little neighborhood group, and they do things together. Like they grow shiitake mushrooms, and they, like they take trips together to the Keys or West Virginia. Like they do things, and it makes life feel bigger
Yeah.
rather than you're getting smaller and
Yeah.
going into that warehousing mode. I think
Yeah.
like the idea is really to continue to add in, and then, hopefully, it's not a slow and painful suffering
Right.
death from chronic illness. I
Right.
mean, Parkinson's is a terrible, it can be really hard with chronic Parkinson's that's not treated properly. And then we're just seeing a lot of dementia as well. Okay. Let's talk about hormone, not replacement, but hormone therapy later in life.
She's never because you corrected her, she's never gonna, like, forget that again. She's never gonna
No,
say hormone replacement.
I don't want to.
I mean, I do
such
think
good
it's a
thing.
helpful distinction
It
because,
really is.
again, we aren't replacing where you used to
No.
be.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
Love
Yeah.
Yeah. So there is this we're at this level now where people are and physicians are starting to accept that hormone therapy has a lot of benefits, it's a good thing, but there's still this caveat of only if you're less than 10 years from menopause or under the age of 60. And if you're older, then sorry, you'll die,
Yeah.
basically.
Right.
So that all of that, the age thing comes from the WHI study again,
Right.
Women's Health Initiative. They did multiple publications, looking at the data multiple different times, which is a normal thing with a study that big. One of those publications came out in 2013, and they looked at a whole bunch of different outcomes, and they looked at age brackets and the differences in outcomes based on age brackets. So they looked at women 50 to 59,
Yeah.
60 to 69, and 70 to 79. And what they found, this is where the whole age thing comes from.
Yes.
What they found was that for women 50 to 59, that there is a reduction in cardiovascular disease with hormone therapy compared to placebo. And for the other age brackets, there is no difference
Okay.
for cardiovascular disease. Hormone therapy does not increase cardiovascular disease for 60 to 69 or 70 to 79.
No statistically significant difference.
There's no statistically significant difference, which
Okay.
means there's no difference.
Nothing. Take it, leave it.
Right.
Okay.
For all-cause mortality, so death from any cause.
Yeah.
In the older age groups, there's no difference with hormone therapy compared to placebo. So
Okay.
hormone therapy did not increase all-cause mortality.
All right.
There was none of those outcomes except for osteoporotic fractures. Those were obviously decreased with hormone therapy in all age groups. But there was no outcome that hormone therapy showed a significant difference. But that's still the publication where they concluded women over the age of 60 should not get hormone therapy because it may not be safe. It's pretty mind-blowing.
So the conclusion is there's no difference in comorbidities, there's no difference in heart disease, increase or reduction. They did see some benefit in osteoporosis.
In fractures.
Right. So that's a benefit.
That's a benefit.
Which is huge because it usually is what kills people.
Right.
So there's no difference in comorbidities, but there is a difference in fractures.
Right.
Okay. Which ultimately kill people.
Right.
Okay.
But the recommendation is
Don't use it.
don't use it.
But there's no risks. There's no increased risks of anything.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we're using it in the 11,000 women who were not having
Symptoms. Right.
But it's still, this is the conclusion that they're reaching because they don't want. I mean, I don't understand why we wouldn't
there has been a lot of discussion in the menopause world of why did the WHI authors sort of force this issue for over the course of 20 years?
Is there some business interest or like?
Well, it there who knows
Okay.
exactly, but in the academic world, your success is tied to your research and
the impact of your research.
and the impact. And so something that is going to scare women and have this like major impact, health impact, um nationwide is going to be a big deal in terms of your career as an academician. And then if you start that way, if you start off saying in 2002, hey, this is hormone therapy is bad, and that's what our study shows. Then to go years later when you realize that wasn't a great conclusion, that the data didn't actually show that, it is very hard to then backtrack on that, what you said. And so
This was in the middle. It was in the middle. We were wrong about young women, but for older women, it's still bad. Okay.
And what's also frustrating is that there were other studies ongoing at the time the WHI was happening. And because of the announcements from the WHI, they stopped
all the studies.
Yeah.
Even though there was a large Danish study, I believe, that was showing really significant cardiovascular benefit. But they stopped it because of these findings from the WHI.
And heart disease is going to be the number one, or is the number one killer of women right now.
Yeah.
And okay. And the other thing is that dementia deaths are also increasing. And we know that with increased estrogen in your brain, you actually do better from a brain perspective as well, if I'm not mistaken.
We talked about
Yes.
Yes.
I think that it's frustrating, again, like going back to that, we don't have enough data.
Okay.
There's just not data to definitively say that it's protective.
Yeah. But what we do know is that if we give, if we do some hormone balancing in women in their 60s, their 70s, their 80s, their 90s, and beyond, we will see certain benefits like strengthening their bones. We will see increase in like overall health, like sleep and sex and thickening of the pelvic floor. And
you see also a reduction in cholesterol.
A reduction in cholesterol. So like these are benefits.
And an improvement in insulin resistance.
Even if you've not been taking it for 10 years postmenopausal, we are still going to see these benefits. And I mean, again, like UTIs are and it's because women don't want to drink because they can't move to get to the bathroom. And it's uncomfortable because they're not moving their bodies. And so like we see this, and I had a client, I was like, look at you with your big, jug of water. I'm so proud of you. And she's like, oh no, it's Diet Coke. I was like, no, we talked about this. She's like, I know, I love my Diet Coke. I'm like, oh my. Okay. But it's like it's movement and all these things. It's like everything kind of becomes more challenging.
Right.
But if we can just help with the thickening of the pelvic floor, it could potentially help to some extent.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just incontinence in general.
And that's been shown. There's data to support that.
I think the dementia piece, intuitively,
it's not data
makes sense that it would be beneficial because we know it benefits you cardiovascularly.
Yeah.
There's definitely a connection between your cardiovascular health and your dementia risk and your metabolic health and your dementia risk. So, it can only be good to improve all those measures.
I mean, and what we know about just movement in general is that your brain benefits.
Right.
Like the number one thing you can do for dementia is moving your bodies. Whether or not it's because of that or the fact that you guys are helping people to get moving, just general movement.
Yeah. That makes such a big difference.
Huge.
And lawyers, like, we go to these conferences and we sit for like 8 hours. You guys do too, right?
Yeah.
And everyone's talking about, you need to move your bodies. Da, da, da. Well, I get everybody up and I'm like, okay, we're going to do some breath work and we're going to move and we're going to do yoga. And everyone's like, oh, but then they do it and they're like, my brain is working better now. So, I mean, it's like these simple things that we could incorporate.
Yeah.
All of us could
All of us.
incorporate.
And it's never too late.
Yeah.
I mean, you could be 75
Yeah.
and not doing any of these things, and it can still have a tremendous impact on your life if you start moving more than you are currently
Yeah.
and start eating better.
Yeah.
It can have a huge impact.
I think there is this idea as well that people are constrained for whatever is approved by Medicare, for example. And so if you don't get PT appointments through Medicare, then you shouldn't possibly pay for them, even if you have $1 million in the bank. And I'm like, no, you can actually use PT and OT and, go get the speech therapy and pay for it out of pocket, even if Medicare isn't going to cover that for you.
I do think that that's a big issue for older people, is that sort of fixation on Medicare and only like Medicare is going to take care of all their problems. And the healthcare system right now, it's becoming very difficult to get all of the care that you need and to get good quality care in the insurance-based system.
Yes.
And so I think that's a downside for people that just want to use their Medicare. Because then they can't get extra PT, which they're going to need, and they can't see other doctors. And it's a very big deal.
Would their hormone therapy be covered in their 70s, 80s, 90s?
I think that it probably would be iffy.
Yeah.
I think it would be a case by case basis if it's going to get covered or
Yeah.
But the positive is these medications are not expensive.
Yeah, they're
so if
pretty
you
cheap.
have to
That's
pay for
great.
them out of pocket,
Yeah.
they're not expensive.
And I think that is another issue. Like, do you guys take insurance at your practice?
We don't. We're a
Okay.
direct care practice.
Okay.
And we do that. We made that decision intentionally because we knew that if we were an insurance-based practice, that we would be driven by numbers. We would have to have a huge number of patients to be able to be sustainable. And we didn't want to practice that way anymore. We all came from that system and we just didn't want to do that anymore. We wanted to be able to take our time with patients and really give people the time they deserved to feel heard, to ask all the questions that they want to, for us to be able to educate and then know that our patients are actually understanding what we're saying.
Right.
And so it's made it harder, but we all love it. We are much more fulfilled doing it that way, which is important because nobody wants to see a burned out doctor. And our patients love it.
And I mean, you guys do telemedicine too, pretty much.
Absolutely.
And honestly, like in particular, my senior clients love telemedicine because it means they don't have to get up and take a shower and get in the car and sit in a busy room full of people and wait 2 hours. And then they didn't drink their water today and they missed lunch. And, like they love telemedicine.
Yeah.
So and that is something that you guys can do effectively. So it's like a cost to enter the program that you guys are going to go through all the 6 pillars with this new patient. And they're going to get the DEXA fit, which I'm doing tomorrow morning, find out what their VO2 max is, go through the meeting with the nutritionist, meet with you. I get to meet with you coming up. And then you meet with me again, like I think a few times as well during the whole program. And then we get to see this improvement. We have a baseline established and we can see, am I improving? I know for me, like I am a really big, I like to see myself do everything I can to thrive and to stay active and engaged. I just don't want to get smaller.
Yeah.
And you guys are going to give me the tools to do that. Yes. I think that's awesome.
And just like we discussed that I think menopause can be this time of, this wonderful time of investing in yourself more. That's kind of how I frame it to people that come to see us. generally they're coming to us because what they've been doing isn't working, right? They've
It's
been
not.
going through the traditional healthcare system and they're not getting where they want to be. And so I look at it as you come to us because you are ready to really invest in your long-term health, and take the time it takes.
You have to do the work.
You do have
Which
to
is
do.
hard.
It's not a pill. It's not a surgery.
No.
You do have to do the work.
And when that birthday cake comes by, like you take a little teeny bit because you're going to have to walk for 10 minutes to keep your glucose levels from spiking so high. But the information is so important. Honestly, like I used to think of myself as like the person who could eat like whatever I wanted.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't see a glucose spike.
Used to be.
Right.
Yeah.
It did. And then I actually, got the data and the glucose monitor and I'm like, no, girl, everything that people say is actually true for you also.
Yeah.
But it's probably true for you because you're postmenopausal.
Right.
Yeah. When you were 40,
Right.
45,
Yes.
if you wouldn't have had that same glucose.
I think right.
Yeah.
Because I never saw that thing. And like it's totally different now.
Mhm.
But also it gives me an opportunity because, I haven't done heavy weightlifting. There was like probably 15 years where I didn't do that. I did it when I was younger, but like now, like it's actually kind of fun.
And you
try
feel
something.
good after you
Oh
do
my
it.
gosh, you feel great.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm strong.
You feel like a badass.
You feel like a badass.
Yeah.
The kettlebell.
Yeah.
And I like get my gloves out and I'm punching the bag and like, it's really fun. It's totally different. So I love that. I love that opening. Okay. All right. I don't want to overstay with you guys. Men, but let's talk about men. Do you have men in your practice? Do you see male patients and what kinds of services do you provide to them? Is it the same or is it different?
Yeah, we definitely see men in our practice, and it would be, very similar in terms of systematically going through each pillar of lifestyle medicine and considering testosterone therapy if that's appropriate.
Great. Okay. Do you have a lot of men in your practice?
I would say that we have maybe 20% of our patients.
That's great.
Mhm.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. So aside from the lifestyle medicine, is there any other services that you guys provide that we could talk about?
We do. So 2 of us are board certified in obesity medicine also, but all of us do obesity treatment. And so we also work with patients on that. We
Like GLP-1.
we prescribe GLP-1s. I think they're great drugs. They have side effects and they're not for everybody, but they are really good drugs for people that need them.
Especially if you're doing all the other lifestyle stuff. That,
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's great. And actually, I was listening to a webinar recently about the mental health aspects of GLP-1s, like that there are really good like brain benefits from the GLP-1s. So,
There's active studies now looking at addiction and GLP-1s, which will be really interesting to see what those studies end up showing.
that's so awesome. So great.
Yeah.
Okay, what have we forgotten? So like hormone balancing therapy for older people is still an option. There is
Still an
no
option.
cutoff where you're not going to benefit from it. And I mean, talking about it, like giving people options.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think there's always a reason to have a risk benefit conversation about it. And there's no data that supports this like after 60 it's a hard cutoff. You can't have hormone therapy. That there just isn't data to support that. And remembering also that the guidelines are very important, but they're always very conservative because they have to be. And so there's physicians that, will never stray against a guideline. And I understand that, and that makes sense. But there's also reasons to stray from guidelines because they tend to be very conservative. And sometimes in a very restrictive way. Like the whole, over 60 are issues.
Like we should be looking at the data. Like I feel like we tend to trust what people say instead of like, what does the data actually say? What really are they basing this conclusion on? And then like looking at it because it's like that, Women's Health Initiative, it was like for a long time without anyone really vetting like what
diving
really,
deeper.
like what really happened there, you know?
Yeah.
But I'm glad that it finally got debunked because Peter Attia always talks about like that was the worst thing that could happen to women was that
It really was.
I mean, it really was.
It was a good trial. It was how the authors handled it.
The
The
interpretation.
interpretation was bad.
Yeah.
It was a good trial, but the interpretation was bad.
Yeah.
And I think you always have to ask that question. Okay, if you're making a recommendation, what are you basing it on? So another frustrating thing is the USPSTF, which is a board that makes recommendations for different kinds of screening or therapies or things like that.
Yeah.
As of 2023, I don't believe they revisited it.
Yeah.
Still gave hormone therapy a D
Prevention.
for prevention. Even though when you dive deeper, the studies that they decided to include when deciding on that recommendation, less than 1,000 of the women were on estradiol,
What were they on?
like conjugated equine.
Oh my
estrogen.
gosh.
And they totally excluded the Danish trial because they decided that, I don't know, it wasn't blinded properly when it came to certain outcomes, even though the outcomes were things like stroke and MI, which are kind of hard to fake. And
MI being
myocardial infarction,
like
yeah.
heart attack. Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just another infuriating kind of, women are going to look at that and be scared, right?
Yeah.
Even though if you look at how they decided it, it doesn't make a whole lot of
And
sense.
that it's like, we really do need to educate ourselves. We really do. And we need to make the decisions the way we're supposed to be making them with the informed consent. What are the risks and benefits of this? What am I going to gain from this? And I think maybe getting away from this idea that we are, so terrified of breast cancer. I mean, not that breast cancer isn't terrible. It is, but it's not all we are.
Right.
We are our heart, we are our mind, we are our bodies, we are, all these other parts of us, that we're just kind of ignoring because, heaven forbid you should have a small 2% increase, but really there isn't. So, okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, you guys. I really appreciate both of you. I mean, to get two of you to come is so nice. And thank you so much for this deep dive. And I'm really excited to take our viewers on the tour inside of your practice because I think it's going to be really.
Thank you so much for having us.
And Anne Collette, I think, is going to do my DexaFit tomorrow. And then we may have her on as a podcast guest. So she's going to, she's going to take us into VO2 max and zone 2 cardio and tell us what are the tools available to assess these things.
I love it.
We're really excited.
Awesome. Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you so much.
If this episode made you think of someone who might benefit from hearing it, we encourage you to share it. These conversations matter. And to stay connected with future episodes of Thriving to the Finish Line, be sure to subscribe. Thank you for spending time with us.